The world is fundamentally changing and a lot of old ways don't work anymore. I believe there was never more prominent time for this radical change and building our businesses differently. My name is Elira, and in this new business paradigm podcast, I challenge all business concepts and I bring new and different perspectives for the ways we work, build our businesses and ourselves. I believe in the economy of care, and I stand for creating businesses your own authentic way while doing it with ease, effortless flow, and joy. I would like to invite the experience of entrepreneurship as the journey of more homecoming to yourself. I am really very excited to talk about this topic because this topic is basically the pillar or the foundational part of my work on how I approach rewiring the way we work and create and build business. And, you know, I am big about capacity work because I think capacity work is everything. And when you increase your capacity and when you go in the depth of your capacity, then not only you can receive more, hold more, manage more, but also experience more and feel more and show up more. And also the business, what I realized, the business and strategies and your way of being shows up from very different place. In the work that I'm doing with people, it's really, I notice so many rewirings happening, which is also almost people changing their business completely or shifting to different directions because suddenly a new window opens up. And for me, capacity, window of capacity, or let's say window of tolerance or capacity edge or upper limit, there are many names for it. Different people call it, different experts call it different names of it. But this is very, very, very interesting topic, which I think is so underlooked and underestimated. And capacity edge, I will stick with that title for now. But capacity edge for me is exactly that boundary where we feel our nervous system feels it's getting dangerous, it's getting unsafe, I cannot take it anymore. Where it's that boundary where it's like, I still can do it, I can still proceed, but red flags and all alerts starts to kind of ring and say like, ooh, we're getting in the danger zone. And capacity edge can be in everything through life. It can be how much stress we can handle, how much contact we can handle, but also how much goodness we can handle, how much work, how long we can work, but also how much pleasure we can receive, how much goodness we can allow in our hearts, how can joy we really allow ourselves. Because what I notice even more, people not struggling so much to the capacity edge of the struggle and overwhelm and stress, people also struggle about the edge of the goodness of life, all the delights of life, and really allow and receive that. And that's actually where a lot of work of mine is to invite people to stop at that edge, to slow down and notice that edge and stay with it, because there's a lot of wisdom in that little tiny whisper of boundary. It can be your body is communicating, oh, there is like trauma that we experienced before when we did the same thing. Or it can be like, oh, this is unknown territory, I'm super scared. And what we tend to do, we tend to really override it till our nervous system starts completely feeling safe and goes into freeze, into overwhelm, into panic, and the burnout or numbness. But that's already way beyond your window of tolerance, way beyond your capacity edge. And this is where you have to start healing, regulating, and coming back to yourself. But if you slow down and start working with your capacity edge, you don't go in those extremes so often or so intense, because you capture yourself and you allow to listen to your body or parts of you that are not ready to go there. And I often say we can go as fast as our slowest part of ourselves can go. And in capacity edge is where those slowest parts of ourselves starts to raise the hand. It's like, I'm not ready. I'm afraid. I'm scared. But what we do, we override that. We dismiss that, we move on, and then you know how it ends up. But if you really stop at that capacity edge and give that little boundary space, it's in a way approaching yourself with kindness, approaching all your parts with kindness. It's like, when the kid starts to walk, they are very grumbly, they don't know, they look at you if it's okay. And you are so kind to them. Like every little boundary they push further, you are kind. It's every stretch of their capacity to walk. You hold them with love and kindness, and slowly. But we forget to do that to ourselves later on. And this is where then we go into huge traumatic responses, which becomes identities. And then we go out of pilot and create not only our work and relationships, but societies and the systems where it comes from completely outside window of tolerance, which means trauma response or dysregulated nervous system, from fear, from scarcity. So window of tolerance for me is another example. I love to say is like the bank of the river. So if your bank of the river is very small, very little water can go through it, which means river means you, your gifts, your medicine, your life, your experiences, your feelings. But if you increase that window of tolerance, if you increase that bank, much more water can go, and it can go strongly, and it go more powerfully and more nourishing, and it can get a momentum. So that's the capacity work for me, to increase that bank, those boundaries where your window of tolerance increases. And we all have very different window of tolerance with that capacity edge. And it can be also, as you know, different every day. And that also is good to notice, because often people go out of pilot, like ignoring their window of tolerance, which is impacted, or that capacity window impacted by recent events, by your hormones, by your experiences of life. It can be very little one day and very big another day. And we kind of take that autopilot, that very mechanical approach, how much we to deliver 8 hours a day, we have to work, instead of honoring and working with your capacity and honoring that capacity edge. So capacity edge for me became a best friend. Like this is where I work all the time. And this is where I find so much wisdom, but also so much gentleness with myself and so much depth. Because if you start to listen, there is so much information if you really go deep from that little, maybe tiny thing that was knocking in that boundary, in that capacity edge. Especially I find it when we try to expand that capacity edge in the growth. Because what I find that capacity edge is very beautiful and transformational place where your old you meets new you. It's a very powerful meeting point. And old you, I mean like the you who got used to do this way, be this way, relate this way, doing this way of pattern. But new you is above that capacity edge. It's like showing up differently, doing more, experiencing differently, creating differently. This is where your dreams and desires and vision and more of you exists, like new you, the one you want to create. And that capacity edge is that the clashing point of old use, like, no, we always did this way. No, but I know this way. I'm familiar here. I'm afraid to go there. I was not allowed before, something like that. You know, those stories, those mental chatters that start to come up, all the feelings, all the explanations that start to talk. This is kind of old you, past you, who collected a lot of experiences, a lot of imprints, a lot of rules, how we should be, should do. And then there's that other part of you, which is like, oh, but I want to make a movement. This is me, you know, I want to make a movement. I want to change the world. I want to create a lot. And then those two parts clash and in that capacity edge. The one is ready to move on, another is not. And if you don't stop in that capacity edge and don't let them talk and give space, usually, you know, you come back, your body and your nervous system tries to bring you back in the window of tolerance, in that capacity window you're familiar with, because at least that feels safe. And I see so many ways how people sabotage themselves. Like, for example, I post every day such a good content, but people not showing up, people not buying. And I'm immediately like, okay, there's the capacity edge of new me who wants to go there and do the impact and share myself. But old me probably is so scared of visibility because it's a huge fawning or freeze response. And to show up feels the most threatening thing. And this is that clash of capacity. Like, I'm kind of ready, I want to go there, but parts of me are not. And if you don't stop there and don't listen, you know what happens. You just kind of go and repeat, or you get stuck, or it feels like it's one pedal is on the gas and one is on the brake, and you just cannot move forward. Or your 4Fs of nervous system starts to kick, like fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and your nervous system puts where it's at least familiar. I don't believe anymore, like, you have to toughen up and just go and do it and be strong, just do what you want, or just listen to your body also. I feel like that's at least it's not working for me. And it's not working for a lot of people. It works for a while until you reach a certain capacity edge, because that's also the energy of contraction. And when there's a contraction, there's no expansion. And what I find true to me and my work, and this is my approach, is to approach that with kindness. It's like, yeah, I want to go there, but I'm afraid. So what are you afraid of? Like, what are those two parts, old you and new you, meeting point is? Like, what are they telling? What do they both long and need? It's a lot of listening. It's a lot of, like, for example, when I start to work on my receiving capacity edge, it's the moment I start to receive all the goodness that come, the edge of me was, I noticed a lot of shame and guilt came up. So this is where I knew I have to slow down and listen all those voices, all those feelings, because if I ignore it or override it, I just sabotage myself that I don't receive. I just block my heart. I put my guards on, which is not really receiving. It's not really expanding your receiving part. And we constantly bump into that. And that capacity edge, often your nervous system informs through kind of signaling through your body, through emotions, through physiology, through thoughts. There is a threat. There's some, that moment where it's like, I still can do it, but I feel kind of a threat. And it can be a really very gentle and very little. Like, for example, you go to meet the friend you haven't seen for a long, long time in a cafe, and you're very excited, but you're also nervous. And that's the edge. Like, okay, so often we ignore that and we just, we just go and meet our friend, and then we go there and our friend is not showing up. So our nervousness is building up. And what we often do, and I also guilty as charged, I did that many times and I still sometimes do it, our body starts naturally to kind of create that artificial window of tolerance to regulate and put us back into that capacity that we can handle this. So what we often do, if we don't stop and really listen in that moment, we grab the phone. And while we're waiting for our friend, we're like just scrolling, because there is a need for all control with the connection, or listening, like listening to that part that which is afraid. And why I call it artificial window of tolerance? Because it kind of temporarily soothes us, like, maybe scrolling kind of distracts us, but it never really brings to capacity. It never really brings us to regulation, never really brings us to full ease. That's why it's kind of artificial. It's kind of taking the drug for a moment, it works, but it never really heals you. So that's for me such an important part. And that's why it's so, I invite everyone to slow down so much, because if you slow down and notice those tiny moments, they often, like the first signs, the first signals, the red flags, or your body kind of, or voices trying to communicate something here is shifting or getting dangerous, or some boundaries are crossed. And just to slow down and pause and allow yourself to listen. That's why it's so, I feel like slowing down like this speeds you up in a long run. And that's why I love this work so much. That's why I love this capacity approach, because also you can start to feel more. When you feel more opens up in you. And when you feel more or experience more, then your nervous system starts to kind of experience like, oh, it's okay, I survive, it's fine. Oh, I met that friend, it was fine, so I can meet it again. Or, oh, I launched that program and I can do it again, it's fine, I survived. That's the path of gentleness for me. Gentleness with yourself, gentleness with your body and your system and your own pace and your own way of blooming and your own way of expanding. And this is where another distraction that I notice a lot of people go and try to find what worked for others in business. That's why there's such obsession about strategies and, okay, what to do and what is the trend now and what is the message, instead of like really connecting and listening, like, why do I do that? What part of me is afraid to be expressed authentically? What do I want to do it? So that's like there are so many first little signals that we ignore, and that's the capacity edge whispers. And this is where my capacity path is built around. We're going in all those bodies, like emotional body, mental body, energetic body, in the depth of you, and all those capacity edges that you ignore now, but maybe also ignored in the past. And we revisit them. And we heal, or we expand, or we give new imprints for your nervous system that it's okay to do this and that. It's okay to feel heartbreak and to feel joy and move on at the same time. And I feel like people who have a small window of tolerance, first of all, it comes to nervous system work. They have a lot of trauma that they didn't work out. But also, in other words, they have a lot of capacity edges they ignored, and then it shrank the capacity. And sometimes just acknowledging I'm at the capacity edge, it does the magic. Just giving the credit. And what comes to me also, another way to explaining is it's like, when someone presses your boundary, like you press somewhere on your body, and at a certain point it starts to hurt or starts to be too much. And if they don't stop and they continue, it becomes really painful. But if they stop just in the moment where it starts to hurt and wait for till your body adapts to it, they can go way further without pain. So that's another way of metaphor how our capacity edge works. We often don't stop and don't wait to acclimatize or rearrange ourselves and all of us to the new boundary. And we know how it goes. If we ignore, then it goes to anxiety, and then piles up, and then goes to overwhelm and a panic attack. So it's like, in a way, life is telling, like, hey, not life, like your system, your body, your nervous system says, hey, I'm a bit scared here. It's like, no, I'm ignoring it. It's like, hey, I'm here. I don't want to go there. It's like, no, we're still going. We sit down now. That's, in a way, in other words, how it works if we ignore our little capacity edges. So much love and self-respect in this, and also possibility for wisdom and expansion. Yeah, and there are so many examples. Like, for example, recently I talked with a friend, and she was replaying the abuse pattern. And she didn't notice her capacity edge of where she allows that and how much she can allow that. She was just overriding it till the moment where she's like completely paralyzed. And those abusive energies, they really do the mess in your life. So then she takes months to recover and clean up and come back to her normal self. And I said, why didn't you stop in the first signs of it, like the first edges of it, where your body says, oh, I'm not sure here. But she had that old version of her who says, if I said yes, I had to commit till the end, even if it's abusive to me. And new version of her is like, no, I want to be free. I want to be gentle. I want to embrace life with open heart. And those two versions of her clashed in that capacity edge. Capacity to hold that new heart, hold that open heart. And then we talked, and I said, why don't you stop at those edges and just, first of all, breathe. And secondly, why don't you just set the boundary in the first signs of it? If it's no. And she immediately changed everything. And now she doesn't have to go, because then again, this example is of putting one step forward and one step back. Then you can never really expand and move. And that's why I notice people live almost the same year for 80 years, or the same pattern or experience many, many times, and they just stay in their capacity window all the time. instead of really expanding, really growing, really allowing yourself more life and more feelings and more experiences and more delights and dreams. It's so funny how like we say to ourselves like, oh, I just have to say no to that old me, and then I just have to say yes. Like if it was so easy, you would have done it already. Again, that meeting point, that edge, like if you really sit and allow yourself to listen, like what is that old version of you afraid to let go? What it feels safe there? What does it need also? So it's kind of very, very interesting meeting point, because I also notice in my own experience, when you say yes, it brings a lot of capacity edges. And this is, maybe that's the capacity. Like what does it mean if I say yes? Like would it, like maybe that's the old version of you is afraid to deal with. It's comfortable, you can manage it, it knows how to deal with it. I notice where contraction starts to happen, and I just go in that resistance. There's wisdom in each resistance, and just to like not to increase the resistance, because it's also builds your protection mechanism, but just to kind of allow and explore with curiosity. So what is there? What the resistance is trying to tell me here? What does it need? And it can be like weird stuff can come out if you allow, like, oh, that's the shame, or from my previous generations, or it's not me anymore, or this way of rule or belief is not valid anymore, like. But if you don't allow that, stop in that resistance, which is also comes with that capacity edge, then resistance just builds up and you never pass it through. Another form of also example of capacity edge is like your glass ceiling. And in every level of expansion, every level of growth, you bump into the glass ceiling. So it's a bit uncomfortable, but unless you pop it out, you will never meet the version or the thing that hold that glass ceiling. You have to look who's holding that glass ceiling before expand it on that next level. But more you learn to honor your capacity edge, more you can sit and be softer with other people's capacity edges. Is that thing where you can meet others as deep as you met yourself. But it's not your responsibility how other people react or where they are at, or this is if you let that affect you, then you kind of shrinking towards them and their capacity edge, instead of staying in your capacity edge and letting them rise towards you. But if you're here on this call, I think you're here to lead different way of being and different capacity. So I love this so much, this topic, because this is for me that opened completely different way of living and completely different amount how much I hold in my life right now. So my business starts to bloom. I like even 1 or 2 years ago, I couldn't hold even, 2 programs. It was beyond. I couldn't even hold 1 group program. I was just one-on-one. And when I started to work very gently on that capacity, instead of re-traumatizing myself all the time and coming back to my little window, I'm holding few very powerful programs now. I'm having few launches. My personal life is expanding, growing, including people, animals, and all. I'm holding it all, and the most amazing part is easeful, because when you're in the capacity, when you kind of stretch those windows, then there's no resistance. Resistance starts to show up where we, at that capacity edge. And the funny thing, more you start to work in these capacity edges, more you notice there are so many of them all the time. Thank you so much for joining today. I hope to see you next time.